Hello and welcome to the final episode of our season. In this one, I'm interviewing Dr. Alison Ash, or Ali among friends. She runs a number of fantastic workshops here in the Bay Area on various aspects of sexuality. Even just her list of workshop titles on her website is enough to make me a little hot under the collar, I'm not gonna lie. With names like Cultivating Your Pleasure, How to Be a Feminist in the Bedroom, and How to Eat Pussy Like a Champ. How could you say no? Well, actually, saying no is one of the powerful other things that she teaches. I've met Ali a couple of times and have done some of her workshops, but it wasn't until this interview that I felt I really clicked with her. It was a wonderful conversation and we get into some fantastic depth. I can't wait to share it with you. Listen to the episode. Hello and welcome to the final episode of our season. In this one, I'm interviewing Dr. Alison Ash, or Ali among friends. She runs a number of fantastic workshops here in the Bay Area on various aspects of sexuality. Even just her list of workshop titles on her website is enough to make me a little hot under the collar, I'm not gonna lie. With names like Cultivating Your Pleasure, How to Be a Feminist in the Bedroom, and How to Eat Pussy Like a Champ. How could you say no? Well, actually, saying no is one of the powerful other things that she teaches. I've met Ali a couple of times and have done some of her workshops, but it wasn't until this interview that I felt I really clicked with her. It was a wonderful conversation and we get into some fantastic depth. I can't wait to share it with you. Listen to the episode and then check out Ali's website on turnon.love if you want to learn more. So I'd love to start by asking you what your name is and what pronouns you prefer, please.
Sure. My name is Dr. Alison Ash, but everybody calls me Ali, and I use she, her pronouns, but am fine with any, really.
Awesome. Whereabouts do you call home?
San Francisco currently, though I'm moving to Oakland, but I think Bay Area is definitely home for me for the foreseeable future. I just love it here.
Yeah, I'm based in Oakland. I keep trying to recruit people to join me.
I bounce all over the Bay, but the Bay is definitely home.
I'm going to jump straight into this. I've actually been to a couple of your workshops and I absolutely love the work you do. Can you say a little bit about what you do and who you do it for?
Sure, yes. So I am a sex and intimacy coach and educator. And so what that means is I offer coaching for individuals, couples, and groups, helping them learn how to cultivate and maintain physical, sexual, and emotional intimacy. And then I also craft a range of workshops. I think I have about 15 I'm currently offering, as well as retreats geared towards helping folks with those same uh, uh, skills and learning new perspectives and tools so that they can have the kinds of sexual interactions and romantic relationships that they want. And I also was recently hired by Stanford, so I'll be teaching sexual and emotional intimacy skills there as well in January.
What do you think draws people to come to your workshops?
We're all really facing this challenging bind where we're supposed to know how to create intimacy, yet most of us are not taught how to do that. If we're lucky, we might learn that in our family systems, but we're probably learning more physical and emotional intimacy, not sexual intimacy. And we are very rarely learning this at school. And if we are learning at school, we're probably learning more around safer sex practices rather than actual intimacy skills. And so I work with so many adults that are just hungry for this information because they're finding that they're either not able to acquire or maintain the kind of relationships that they want or have the kind of sex that they're craving, and they don't know where to go to for this information because unfortunately it's still a little taboo to talk about it, and it's even more taboo to admit the areas that we feel ignorant or unclear or inexperienced or insecure or unsure or shamed, right?
So obviously you're a little bit in this world, and the world, the work you're about to start doing with Stanford sounds really helpful in that world. Do you think there's hope? Because I remember my sex ed was basically like, here's how you make babies and here's how you prevent babies.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear that recently they're actually starting to implement a little bit more consent, because God forbid they would teach that earlier. But I feel like actual enjoyment and pleasure is taught extremely rarely. Is that starting to change, you think?
You know, it's hard to speak about broader trends. I'm very much in a Bay Area bubble. Um, but there has been research done that shows that when girls are taught about pleasure in a sex positive way, they actually delay first sexual experience, the age at which they lose their virginity or have their first sexual encounter. I'm not a huge fan of that phrase, lose virginity.
Right. Yeah.
And they report more positive experiences when they do have their first sexual encounter. And I can speak from personal experience. I remember my father I was 16. My boyfriend was a couple years older. He was in college. I was going to go visit him for the weekend. It was our 1 year anniversary. I'm sure my father sensed what was coming. And he began what I assumed was the talk. And I remember interrupting him and saying, Dad, 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 I know all about birth control and condoms. And he interrupted back and he said, Allie, that's not what I was going to say. What I wanted to tell you is that you can only have your first experience once. And I hope that you make it really special. And there was something so beautiful about that interaction because there's this implicit permission that he gave me to enjoy myself. And that is one of those memories that I will forever cherish because he trusted me to make a decision that was in my own best interest. And 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 I did have an incredible first experience.
That sounds really kind of insightful and grown up. I think it is pretty sad, I guess, that those stories are pretty rare. But I'm very pleased that that was something that came across your radar. That feels really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
So, Ali, you do a lot of really personal work with your clients, and both in a group setting and in a one-to-one setting. And what I was really wondering about was, what is the thing that's most surprised you about what you've learned about this process?
Well, I think what's so powerful about intimacy is that it's mutual shared vulnerability. That's how we create intimacy. It's this, I love the mnemonic device, into me you see,
That
right?
is beautiful. Yeah.
And so when I'm working with my clients, whether it's in a workshop setting or with individuals or couples or groups, I am creating intimacy with them. Intimacy is a relational skill. It's not something that we can learn just from a book or even a podcast. We learn it in relationship with other people. And so that's how my sex and intimacy coaching practice might vary and differ from traditional psychotherapy, where they might not want to be creating those kinds of connections. I'm very much focused on helping my clients learn the skills that they don't know by helping them practice. So clothes stay on, and there are other boundaries that we create so that everybody feels really safe. And of course, learning how to identify and name boundaries is a vital part of the work. But teaching skills like how to get out of your head and into your body, how to flirt or know when somebody's flirting with you, how to escalate and de-escalate, how to attune to somebody, how to repair when feelings get hurt. Um, all of these skills are so much easier to learn and integrate when you're doing it in real time with somebody rather than just trying to recount your memories and interpretations of your experiences with other people. So every obstacle, every insecurity, every area for growth, every piece of shame that can be a barrier in my clients' day to day lives come up in real time in session with me. And then we can work with it in that way, which I find is a lot more powerful.
So when you say experiential, does that mean you role play things with people, or how does that actually play out?
Yep, sometimes we're role playing. I have various exercises that we do. I give lots of homework assignments so that my clients can integrate the material or learn how, like, observe other people. So, for example, one thing that I work with my clients on is understanding how they're being perceived by other people. Are they being perceived as kind of reserved and containing their desire and a little bit closed off and folks aren't able to read their interest? Or maybe are they kind of like spilling their desire and it's feeling like really intense and maybe even invasive, or it's overwhelming for people? And so I help them learn how to recognize what their energy is like, in part by giving real time feedback of what it's like to be in connection with them, teaching them how to be with their desire in a way that feels really yummy for other people, and then giving them homework assignments to go out and observe and notice other people in the world and see if they can start to observe the body language and the facial expressions that would be the cues of how people are relating to their desires so they can continue to integrate the material, right? So it's this very multifaceted approach where we're looking at it from a sociological lens and understanding how society is structured to create kinds of conditions that make it hard for us. We're looking at an interpersonal level of what's happening between me and my clients. We're looking at individual level at my client's history and past and all of their experiences that might be a part of the story. And we're combining all of those dimensions so that we can really understand how to better create intimacy, because the obstacles can come from all of those levels, right? We can have shame from our individual experiences. That can then make it harder to interact with other people, and the root of that shame could be some of the messages that we've gotten from society about what it means to be a man or a woman, or what sex is supposed to look like, or any of the other shoulds that we adopt because of how we've been socialized.
Yeah. I feel like shame healing in particular is a really big part of people being able to open up to themselves and what they actually want from sexuality, but also from a interpersonal thing, right? If you're scared of how somebody will react to something you want to ask for, that is a really scary and uncertain place to be.
That's exactly right. I have to say that I'm working with shame with every single client that I have. There is not a single person that I have met that doesn't have shame in some way, shape, or form around their experiences of intimacy and connection. And that could be about desires, it could be about their boundaries, it could be about their past experiences or their lack of experiences, it could be about ways that they've been told that they're not enough, or been told that they're too much, or some confusing combination of the two. It's just a very common experience for us to make meaning of our experiences that make our inner critic the expert, right? Because the reason why we
Yeah.
feel shame is because we don't want to be excommunicated from the tribe, right? We're humans, we're interdependent beings. We cannot survive on our own. And so the humans who felt shame were more likely to survive because they were more likely to be included in the tribe. And so we've actually developed a resistance, an aversion to being shamed. Shame is a physically painful experience. We feel it uncomfortably in our bodies. And so, because we don't want to be shamed by others, we develop the voice of our inner critic when we're little kids as the first line of defense. We decide we'll shame ourselves first to keep ourselves in line so that other people don't shame us, because we don't want to experience this, how painful and scary it is to be shamed. And then our inner critics just run with it. And so by the time I'm working with clients, often it's unwinding the shame of the inner critic much more than the shame that they're actually experiencing from other people.
You speak about all of this with such deep empathy and understanding, and it kind of hints to me that you've had quite a journey to get to where you are today as well. Can you share something about what led you to start this work and what made you excited about?
Sure, yeah. Well, I will say that I grew up in a family where there wasn't a lot of intimacy modeled. I think there's a lot of trauma in my lineage, and um, I grew up not really feeling like I had the skills to have the kinds of relationships that I wanted. I struggled to belong. I was teased. I always felt like an outsider, and I was always hungry for connection and for intimacy, and unsure how to get it and unsure why it felt so unavailable to me. And I am so grateful that I moved to the Bay Area, where there's such an abundance of incredible teachers and mentors and healers. And I began an incredible journey into self growth and into understanding and obtaining some of those relational and life skills that I feel like I didn't get growing up. And I think that whenever you learn something that other people just absorb naturally, you kind of see the water that everybody else is swimming in. And it helps you explain it in a way to other people who also didn't get those skills. And it also has given me a deep capacity to empathize with my clients and to relate and to show them that you can learn these skills. You can start to have the kinds of relationships that you want, that there is no too late. There's no what's the phrase? Oh no, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I just don't buy that at all. That's not true. And so I love getting to relate with my clients and help show them that the struggle is real. I get it, but also the ability to overcome it is also there too.
Yeah. And I think that is actually an interesting point to make, because I'm always really worried. So when I started a bunch of this work, I was like, oh my God, I'm about to climb the world's tallest mountain. I have no footholds. I don't even know where to begin. Why do I even bother? Kind of thought pattern. And then you make a couple of tiny steps forward and you learn a couple of techniques and you get to movement. And there's deep beauty in being able to invite those closest to you to be more intimate. But actually, more importantly, in what I like to refer to as casual intimacy, having heart open conversation with less close friends and less, maybe even coworkers, and letting them into a space and saying, hey, I'm here for you to have real conversation. We don't just have to talk about the weather or Trump.
That's right. I love that. I love that casual intimacy.
Yeah. And it's actually gotten to a point where, even some of my regular friends, I'm like, hey, would it be okay if we hugged? Can we be closer, like watching this TV show? Can we, I don't know, hold hands or sit against each other, just for this moment of like, casual intimacy, and just letting, kind of normalizing touch a little bit more in a non-sexual, non-creepy way. I think that's been a really powerful step in the right direction.
I love that. Yeah, and what I would name that is physical intimacy, right? Which is this sense of touch, of that co-regulation that can happen through touch, the closeness that it can create, but touch that's without a sexual or maybe even a sensual charge. It's the kind of touch that you would give a child or a grandparent or a colleague or a friend, right? And I love the normalization of that. It's so powerful. It's incredibly healing. It is the most regulating thing for the nervous system. And so many people are deprived of touch. Actually, I work with a lot of clients who on a day-to-day basis go without any touch, and it just breaks my heart.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You just used a term earlier that I would like to talk a little bit more about. You said co-regulation. Can you say what you mean by that and why you think it's important?
Sure, although we're going to start to get out into geek out
I
territory.
love it. Let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to geek out a little bit, but I'm going to try and keep it streamlined here for you. Co-regulation is this really important process of soothing your nervous system. And we can do that through self-soothing, so self-regulation, and through co-regulation, soothing with other people. And actually, babies, humans, are taught how to co-regulate first. When we're born, we don't know how to soothe our nervous systems. And when we're held by our mothers or our caregivers, and we're held against their heart and their chest, and they have a regulated nervous system, it actually teaches babies how to regulate. And that process is called co-regulation. And when done effectively, those babies grow up and learn how to also self-regulate and self-soothe. So this is where the concept of self-care comes in. But I have to tell you, this whole idea that you have to be able to soothe yourself or love yourself before anybody else will love you is just scientifically untrue. We need to have these experiences of being loved, of being soothed, of being co-regulated, to know that we're worthy of love and to know how to self-soothe and self-regulate. And so I am working with various clients who might have a harder time co-regulating. And so we're going to work on building that capacity for them to be soothed in connection with other people. And I might be working with clients who have a harder time self-soothing. And so I'm going to help them learn how to start to regulate their nervous system and bring that soothing in a way that feels more autonomous and empowering for them to do on their own.
Yeah, that makes sense. You You mentioned something interesting. So the phrase "you have to love yourself before others can love you" is thrown around a lot. And what I just heard you say is that you don't agree with that. Is that right?
I wholeheartedly do not agree with it.
That's amazing. Can you say more? Why do you not think that is a true thing, and why do you think people are uh, walking down the wrong path if they're trying to figure that side out first?
Yeah, I disagree with that because it's scientifically unproven, right? Babies that are born, that even if they're nourished, if they are not touched, if they don't have experiences of being loved, they will die, right? We're interdependent beings. We need to experience love to understand what love is, right? If we don't have that experience of being told and modeled, and even with our touch and with energetic exchange, being told that we are worthy, that we belong, that we have a right to exist, we need to receive these messages when we are born and when we grow up to know that this is our truth as an adult. And so many of my clients who did not have these direct experiences of being loved, that's my job. My job is to love them, to show them that they are worthy of being loved, which is not an intellectual concept. That's an experience that they have to feel in their bodies and in their hearts. And so it's just heartbreaking for me, for people who are out there that have gone through so much trauma or so much neglect, to think that they're the cause of why they're still not experiencing any love. And that's just the second arrow. That's the trauma on top of the trauma.
Yeah, I love how you operate in a space that is often pretty woo. There's a lot of spiritualism. There's a lot of energies, but you are talking about this from both sides, right? I sense that you are a deeply connected person, but that you're also very scientifically driven. Does those two things ever strike you as a conflict, or do they work well hand in hand?
It's really interesting that you asked me that right now. I feel like I'm in the middle of a bit of a spiritual awakening. And so it's a vulnerable question, and one that I'm still happy to discuss, but I wanted to name that it feels vulnerable. I became an atheist at 10, and I'm an academic. I have always been and identified as an intellect, as certainly as a scientist, and I am in the Bay Area, and I have studied Tantra, and I've studied Buddhism, and I have studied other spiritual practices, modalities, and I know that whether or not I believe in anybody's spiritual practice or faith, that it can be a huge source of comfort, a source of growth and learning, a source of community. And also, I have to say that I think science can learn a lot from some of these transformational and spiritual communities around how to integrate mind and body and see the mind body connection,
Yeah,
how to relate to our emotions and our feelings, and how to really understand how they live somatically in our body, um, how to understand touch and intimacy and the ways that we can incorporate that for healing. I wish that we could integrate more of a scientific and a spiritual approach, because I think that each has their own unique offerings. And when it comes to intimacy, it's not purely scientific, it's not all quantifiable. There is the unknown aspect to connection. And if people find that answer in a spiritual lens, then I want to support that.
and I guess the other angle into that is that a lot of challenges you run into, or a lot of kind of, to be fair, anything to do with love, intimacy, or sexuality, you can think about a lot of these things with your brain and intellectualize a lot of it. But really, where it hits you is in the emotional realm. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
science has a lot of research into emotions and how to regulate them. But it feels like never the twain shall meet a lot of the time, right? You're either doing a purely academic study and you're trying to put words to what is essentially ephemeral, or you're trying to feel your way through it, and then suddenly you're completely at a loss for words. Or anyway, that's my experience of it. And I find it really interesting that you are, carving out the intersection between the two. I think that's a really powerful space to be, and I'm very glad that you're spearheading some of that research and some of that teaching.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think it's undeniable that what we think affects our body and our body affects our thoughts. And also that our sensations and our emotions are the language of the body, and that we're not taught how to interpret it. In fact, we're taught to devalue the wisdom of the body. We live in a society that values the rational thinking, logical brain. And there is a lot of benefit from being rational and logical and following our thoughts, but not at the cost of ignoring our intuition and the wisdom of the body. And of course, if we are not attuned to our sensations and our emotions, that's directly going to impact our capacity to feel pleasure and to create intimacy, because pleasure lives in the body, desire lives in the body. And if we're not alive and really awake to the sensations and to the subtlety and the range and the intensity and the good and the bad and the comfortable and the uncomfortable, if we're not really open to all of that, that's going to inhibit, without a doubt, our capacity to feel the full range of pleasure that's available to us.
Do you sometimes catch yourself being in your brain, and how do you bring yourself back into your body?
Oh yeah, I get stuck in my head all the time.
Same.
Um, Though I will say that for me, sex, whether with someone else or through masturbation, was my first way of meditating. And before I even knew anything about meditating, it has been a way for me to get out of my head and focus on the sensations in my body. And it has always been an embodiment meditation for me. I find that when I'm in my head is more in interpersonal interactions. It might be in the flirting and the escalating. Often I'm in my head. I get awkward in groups. I can be in my head in those kinds of social situations as well. And what I try and do is do some breath work. So I'll do breathing where my exhale is twice as long as my inhale. That's really regulating for my nervous system. Um, I will do a body scan and see what kind of sensations I can track in my body. I might stretch or tense and relax certain muscles so that I can start to feel my body again. Um, Sometimes I will name it, especially if I'm in a situation where that feels safe. I'll say, I'm noticing I'm in my head right now and I'd like to be more in my body. Do you think that we could cuddle, or you could scratch my back, or maybe we could talk about it?
Ma'am, you're at the DMV. This is not appropriate.
Right, right.
Okay, maybe not at the DMV, but I think that is a really beautiful thing to be able to name with somebody you care about, and just actually be able to say, "Hey, you know what? I've just caught myself. Is it okay if we change that?"
Yeah.
I think that happens way too rarely in general.
Right, and then it becomes this isolating thing where you're more and more in your head, because now you're in your head that you're in your I'm sorry, now you're in your head because you're in your head, right? So it becomes this intensifying loop, and the connection is the way out. So naming the elephant in the room is an opportunity to shift the dynamic.
Hey, just struck by something. I think most of the people I know, and I definitely fall in that category, and you just mentioned it yourself, is you spend a lot of time in your head and not enough time in your body. Have you come across people who are the other way around, who spend most of their time in their bodies and in the emotional realm, and they struggle to get to their head?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I just thought of that. I don't think I know anybody like that, but I would love to meet that person.
I mean, we live in tech heavy Bay Area, so I think that we're less likely to encounter somebody like that here than maybe in other parts of the world. Um,
If I were to get on an airplane, where should I go?
someplace where they, someplace where there's no technology and no media and time, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that it takes time to learn how to be with the sensations and to be with the the slowing down that requires.
Hey, Ali, I was wondering, you've spoken such with such beautiful clarity about love and your journey in this space. And I was wondering, do you have like a defining figure who has helped you shape that, and how did that happen?
I do, and it's not a human; it's a cat.
That is perfect.
My former cat Gus was probably my first secure attachment in my life, and certainly my closest buddy. I had him through college and all of my major transitions and moves and breakups. And one night I came home late and he was meowing for attention. And we always had a little ritual of how we would greet each other. And I wanted to get Game of Thrones buffing on the TV. So I had my back to him uh, for a few moments to do that before I turned my attention to him. And I heard him make this very horrible noise. And I turned around to see him fall over and die. And it was one of the most traumatic experiences for me, because not only was I losing, this buddy that slept with me on my chest every night, that was my reason to come home, that was my, secure attachment, but also any kind of illusion that I had of permanence was completely shattered. And I went into a deep existential angst where I just was so angry, but also just unclear. Like, how do you live and love in a world that all of a sudden felt so unsafe to me? If I didn't have faith that you would be breathing in 5 minutes or that I would be breathing in 5 minutes, how do you move forward? And I remember just being devastated by this.
Yeah.
And I realized the answer. Um, The answer is to love even harder.
Yes.
In the face of not knowing when and how I'm going to die, I want to know that I've given this world all the love that I have to give and that I've been open to receiving all the love that's available. Because the thing that was so powerful about that experience was that I didn't really feel my feelings somatically in my body very intensely before that. I was actually very unaware of feelings and how to process feelings and how to be with my feelings. And when Gus died, I realized why they call it heartbreak. They call it heartbreak because it feels like your heart is breaking. Like, it feels like you're having a heart attack in your chest that won't go away. But I knew that I would not trade one day of that pain for one less cuddle with that cat. It was so clear to me that it was all worth it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was so powerful about that experience was that I was falling in love with somebody at the same time. I was falling in love with my neighbor. It was a very, very new experience. He came over the day after my cat died, and I had 3 literal boxes of snot rags all over my floor. And this man picked them all up when I was in the bathroom. And I came back with, an armful of my nasty tissues. And he was like, "Where's your garbage can?" And I just love that image because it's so representative of how willing he was to be with me in the messiness of being human and the messiness of grief. And to have that experience of being loved when I was so disheveled and unraveled, and also to feel the love coming into my body, but not hiding or fading or fixing the pain of the grief that I felt, that my body could be with both love and grief at the same time, and that one didn't replace the other. Woof, the two of those experiences combined just taught me so much about unconditional love, about my capacity for love, and about my dedication. I just believe that we are all here to
Yeah.
love and be loved. This is our purpose in life.
I I'm in one of my past lives. I was a end of life coach, so I did a lot of talking to people who are about to experience real grief and experience death and uh, your own mortality and somebody else's mortality and all the bits that come with that. And somebody once told me something, and I found it really insightful, um, which was that they were like, "Hey, grief feels a lot like love with nowhere to go," and that struck
Oh,
me as so real, right?
Hmm.
You've spent so long loving this person, and you know, even if at some point you almost take them for granted, that there's just this, there's always this place for all this love to go. And when that person no longer exists, or in your case the cat no longer exists, that love doesn't stop flowing, and it just takes on a really painful shape for a while.
Hmm. And it's still tender. I mean, it's been years, and I can think about Gus and feel so much love and gratitude now more than the pain, but it's always going to be there, right? I love this concept of grief, that the grief doesn't go away. Our experience just expands to hold
Yeah,
it so that it doesn't feel like it takes up quite as much space.
yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. That's a wonderful story.
Thanks for asking. It's an important one because it's so vital to how I move through the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Ah,
This has been really. Oh, please go ahead. I was just going to say how much I've loved talking with you. I know earlier you said something about casual intimacy, and I wanted to name that I feel like you and I have been able to cultivate such rich intimacy. And I know that you're interviewing me, but it has me just wanting to know so much more about you. And so I feel like thank you for creating the space for me to open up so much. And I also just wanted to name that it has me feeling a desire to be closer to you and know more about you too.
that is wonderful. I mean, I love interviewing people. It's such a fantastic excuse to just ask questions, and sometimes they go nowhere, and sometimes you get these beautiful, rich conversations full of insights and things that kind of trigger in my brain and in my body. It makes me think, wow, this is wonderful and exciting. Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Yeah, and it also depends heavily on the guest actually being being heart open and willing to participate. But it's one of those things. The people we invite on the show are always that, right? I knew from the second I went to one of your workshops, I was like, we need to get her on this podcast. It would be so good to have you involved.
Oh, thank you so much. That feels so good to hear. I fully receive it.
So I have two more questions. One is, what is the one song you can't not dance to?
Oh, without a doubt, Stevie Wonder Superstition. I will be I could be in a church. Well, I don't know if I'd hear that song in a church, but if I did, I would still get up and dance.
Oh my gosh, yes, same. That's such a wonderful one. And the Red Hot Chili Peppers version of that as well makes me like dance in a whole different way, but it's so good.
That's true.
Absolutely love it. And finally, how can we learn more about what you do and what you're doing? Do you have a website? How do people get in touch with you?
Yep, my website is www.turnon.love, and you can reach out to me through my website. You can learn about all of my offerings and join my mailing list. And if you want to get some resources, you can go to turnon.love/free gift. And there are some resources available for you there, as well as scattered throughout my site. So I encourage you to take a peek and reach out if I could be a support to you in any way. I really want to help save the world one orgasm at a time. I think that we can create a lot more pleasure and happiness and joy in this world together.
You just make us all come together, is what you're saying.
Oh, that was so good.
Terrible. Hey, thank you so much. I look forward to getting to know you more and to find out more about where the journey takes you next.
Yes, thank you so much. May this just be the beginning.
For more information about the Human Awareness Institute or our workshops, visit our website at hi.org. That's HAI.org.
Thank you so much for listening to May I Have This Dance. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.